Hello and welcome to the Knowing Self, Knowing Others podcast, where we discuss self-aware leadership with thinkers from around the globe. I'm your host, Nia Thomas. Join me as we talk to today's guest. Today, I'm excited to introduce Monica Haughey, an experienced psychotherapist, passionate change maker and creative entrepreneur. She has over 20 years of experience, and Monica brings deep expertise in human emotion, helping individuals unlock their potential. She's always been involved in affecting change at an individual and collective level, whether that's as a therapist, group worker, or through her community involvement. Beyond her therapy practice, Monica is a force for positive change. She founded the Good Food Initiative, empowering families' health, and authored insightful recipe books as well. Monica's leadership extends to facilitating learning groups and organising Dublin's first Conscious Living and Working Conference. Her ultimate venture, the School of Conscious Living, guides those ready for change. Monica believes in accessing inner strength, building resilient communities, and living conscientiously to shape a better world. For creative entrepreneurs seeking courage, Monica is here to support your journey. So welcome, Monica Haughey, to the show.
Thank you, Nia. That's a lovely introduction.
It's wonderful to have you here. So tell us about your creative entrepreneurial journey. How did you get here?
Yes, well, you know how sometimes in life you get to a certain point and you sort of look back and actually think, yes, I've been a social worker. Yes, I've run cookery classes in the Good Food Initiative. And yes, I've run a conference. And yes, I've run my own practice as a psychotherapist. But really, I've been an entrepreneur since I was young and used to school age make candles and sell them on the bus and light candles and to make fun to make them and be creative, and people wanted them, so I sold them. So I've always sort of done work that sort of feels right and feels of value, and that's really my entrepreneurial journey. I think entrepreneurs are people who see possibilities and listen into themselves, and the kind of entrepreneur I have been is somebody who's been creative and really followed my own heart and what makes sense and meaning to me. So I used to be involved in the Dublin Food Co-op because I'm based in Dublin, but I was very interested in getting people involved and good access to good food, or easy and cheaper access to good food, good organic food. When my children were small, I wanted to keep them well. So I was entrepreneurial around the cookery classes and the recipe books. And it was only in looking back, I think, actually, yeah, I'm a psychotherapist, but I'm quite sort of entrepreneurial, and realized that I do have something to offer around supporting people take risks and be courageous about their lives and step up into what they really want to do and are here to do. So that's how I've sort of combined my entrepreneurial journey and my psychotherapy journey, really.
You describe your one-on-one psychotherapy as helping you find your way back to a more confident and empowered version of yourself and to break free from your limiting beliefs and conditions. Now, to me, that really does sound like there's a lot of reflective work in developing your self-awareness on that journey. So tell us a bit about that psychotherapy. How does that journey for individuals develop?
Yeah. Well, the stage I'm at as a psychotherapist is really helping people move beyond. So that is my style of therapy. There may be people who want to go to more long-term, in-depth sort of processing of your early childhood and traumas, etc. But where I've moved my practice to now, and I think it does sort of partly reflect what's going on in the external world, is that people are wanting to find ways to move on from what's happened and to figure out what's holding them back. And so yeah, how I work is, as I said, people may want to go sort of slower, more in-depth work with another therapist. I know you've had psychoanalysts, and that does tend to be a lot of work with the unconscious and probably more frequent and slower. But the kind I have is more, how do you really listen into yourself and what is it that you really want to do? And so it's about that fits naturally with therapy, because I just see psychotherapy and the humanistic psychotherapy, which is my training, is about providing like a mirror. People come to see themselves, and they come to actually get to know themselves, get to know their own strengths, to take some power back into their lives. And I really think that, again, it is time for that. We've had a lot of structures collapsing. I don't know if you have any astrologers on, but they have certainly very clear, strong explanations about the collapse of structures in the external world. And it's, yeah, it can be frightening and fearful, or it can be seen as an opportunity for us all to do our work, get more clarity on what's holding us back, what's the conditioning, what's the limiting beliefs, and how do we move forward. And that all fits also then with the Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and all those neuroscientists, I don't know, that they're
Yeah.
talking about, like the setting the intention, being clear about what you want, feeling the emotions, getting excited, and then obviously taking the steps. But to me, as therapists, we can also quite easily apply that to our work of increasing people's awareness and believing them and seeing them and trusting them and helping them with both identifying and taking that next step.
It's lovely to hear you talking about The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce
Oh
Lipton.
yeah.
I haven't heard anybody mention that book in quite some time. And I remember I read it probably, maybe 20 years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It's really fascinating. So when you mentioned...
Sorry, go ahead. I think it intuitively makes sense as well. I think that they have found the neuroscience to back up, which I think is a very natural process. If we're getting up in the morning, we think, oh, it's going to be a terrible day, it's raining, or we can set some other intention about something else. But I think that they have got the science behind, which is quite a natural process.
You mentioned holding a mirror up as a
Yes.
way of explaining self-awareness. So how would you define it? If you had to give it a sentence or a definition, how would you define self-awareness?
Well, what I did see is that I see therapy as holding a mirror. That if you come to me as a therapist, having done, I say, at least 20 years of this work, I have sort of honed it down to actually, you're coming to me to meet yourself. And my work would then be about to facilitate your awareness. So, how do you say if somebody's at a point where they want to change jobs, somebody is in a job, they're well paid, but it's gold handcuffs, that kind of thing. And I would say, well, so what's that like? What does it feel like to go into work every day? To really get them to embody what it is like to do this and what keeps them there, what keeps them stuck. But so again, it's about the awareness. They may feel it in their body, and they may have a strong emotion around it, or they may have something physical around it. But it's about helping them develop that awareness, and that's where conscious living comes in. And it's not necessarily meditating to higher levels of vibration. It's actually just about, in my book, it's about awareness and increasing awareness.
How do you do that when you're working with individuals? I mean, we've talked about one-on-one coaching, but is there a different way that we can bring people together, groups or different kind of coaching that you're involved in?
Yes, well, I've been doing it for years now. These call them creative entrepreneur groups, where people who are wanting to design their life and their work and to take charge of their choices, really. And these groups, I find them so, the power of a group is such different from someone in the room on their own. And obviously that's a value and it can be a lead into a group. But people can really come up when they hear people saying maybe things that they'd thought themselves and hadn't really been fully aware of. And there's a lot of mutual support, and what one person finds easy, the other person can find very difficult. And so there's a whole sort of networking and building of community. I mean, I'm continually surprised by the power of the group, and the power of the one-to-one is amplified in a group, really. I had one woman who was a yoga teacher. We were talking about, she thought she came to the group to maybe build her practice and get more clients for her yoga. And the conversation went, and people were saying, tell me. So the group were holding her and listening to her. So I think therapy's been holding and listening and reflecting back. But we had a group holding and listening and reflecting back. And then whatever someone asked her, she said, well, actually, I'm an artist and I really love drawing. But it was only by having this space to sit into herself and to have this space where people were listening, curious, asking questions. And obviously my job is to facilitate that. And I make sure we're not going to tell each other what to do, which we all have a tendency, maybe women more so, but is to keep away from that, get curious, and just what happens in the one-to-one, I think, is amplified in the group. So that's what I love about the groups. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to be able to have those kind of conversations in a group has to be very trusting. It has to be a really safe space. How do you create that safety in that space?
Well, I suppose well, obviously we set rules, but around the respect, etc. But that's almost sort of taken as read. But I
Hmm.
think it's maybe because as a therapist, I'm very able to hold people if they get upset or angry or not quite sure what something is. So I think that if I can model that, then it happens in the group. Uh, that people think, oh, well, such and such somebody, Mary said, was upset there, or she said that she's frightened of putting herself out there. There's so much comes of frightened of success, frightened of failure. But then once someone is vulnerable and they're held, then someone else can be vulnerable as well when they recognize that it is a safe space. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. So there is definitely something there about modeling behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you demonstrate that as the therapist, you almost give everybody else permission that it's okay to share that vulnerability and to hold others within that time and space.
Yeah. And I think probably at this stage I've heard a lot and ran a lot of groups. So that comes across as well, that I'm not so taking it from a book, because it just so intuitively makes sense to me, bringing people together and help, facilitating a supportive network that can continue beyond the group.
Absolutely. Yes. Really important to create those peer networks so that people
Yeah,
can
yeah,
have that connection outside of the group. So
yeah.
tell us about your School of Conscious Living. What's its purpose? What's its objective? What's it all about?
Well, the School of Conscious Living has stemmed from a few things. One is that I ran this conference where I wanted to bring people from the business world, because I would have done a lot of workplace wellness. I would have been involved in sort of campaigns around the environment, and I would have been involved in yoga and meditation, all this spiritual aspect of life. And I was sort of thought, well, it's a pity that all these agendas are different. The Extinction Campaign and corporate social responsibility, and to pull together the agendas, and because they're all joined up really in my view, and that if we were more respectful to each other, respectful to ourselves, workplace was were more happier and people were more satisfied, they wouldn't be so damaging to the environment, and if we were meditating more, etc. So they're all joined up in my view. So that was a very successful conference in that it did bring the different agendas together and brought the conversations together, and and I did get sort of support from industry and the corporates around that conference. So then, as I've evolved through my work, and sort of realizing that this corporate world isn't that different from the world of psychotherapy and vulnerability, and that people all have their stuff, and then doing leadership training and realizing that the best trainers on these leadership programs were people who were talking about emotional intelligence and how
Mm.
people felt about themselves in your presence. And I'm thinking, my goodness, we learned all about that in therapy, but it's amazing that people in the business world are talking about that. So I suppose it's an aware, yeah, well, another awareness, a consciousness that this whole being aware is crucial, no matter whether you're trying to save the planet, which obviously we're all concerned about, or whether it's about work and getting more engagement and happier, healthier employees, etc., or leadership. That really it's about being more conscious of ourselves, our impact on the environment, or how we treat each other, how we are in the workplace. So to me, the theme was consciousness. I followed from off the conference, followed my work with corporates and conscious leadership, and thinking surely the key thing here is
Right.
awareness. And then it fits in. So what I'm doing is I'm doing these webinars, like what stories you tell yourself around money. And if you're doing what you love, then can you not make money, etc. We all have money stories. Topics like manifestation and conscious manifestation, which is sort of in the ether at the moment. But then I'm also thinking about health. We could have health and empowerment, and becoming more aware of our health, and how can we take back some responsibility for our health. So it's a huge possibilities I see around this notion of just becoming more aware.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah, and I often talk to people about why I do what I do, and it's about raising awareness of awareness. And I think once you understand what your values and your strengths and your beliefs are, that helps you decide whether it is sustainability or it's money making or it's about social responsibility, that you can work out what your purpose is and you can use your self-awareness to direct you in that direction.
wonderful. And that's my next. I'd love to develop some tools around that, around finding your purpose, because
Mm.
again, particularly the millennials are all interested in, well, what am I here to do? And who was it, the Barbie song and the Oscars? Why am I here? The
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's again, it's what why am I here? What's my purpose? Yeah.
Yeah. You say that as we grow in awareness of ourselves and our relationships, we can be more effective in our roles as leaders. Tell us why you think that awareness impacts leadership particularly.
Because our leaders are important. It's really important that we have good leaders, and leaders can make a difference. And so the more that we can support leaders to be aware of their impact on others. Recently, I had a new client who is getting promoted and doing very well in her organization because she's challenging out of date systems and practices and people overstepping boundaries, etc. And I think it's really important that I can support her in her awareness that, in
Mm,
fact, she has been full of integrity in pointing something out that's not okay, and that she's actually being promoted because her values are really good. And I've talked to her about, and yeah, of course, people are going to be annoyed that you're going up the ranks, but so to be aware of the impact that her success is going to have on others. It's not, as I was saying to her, other people's stuff isn't our business, but to help her with the awareness of that she is in her own path and her own integrity, and very clear about what she's doing around progressing up the company, and to be aware that other people are dissatisfied about it, and to be aware that don't take anything personally. In that book, The Four Agreements, is for not rocket science, but don't take anything personally. It's that awareness that, it's I think women particularly like things to be nice, and not to upset people, and to have that awareness that that's partly her stuff, that she'd prefer not to rock the boat and to be nice. And she's just working well and professionally. But that awareness of the impact of that on others, and that it's not her stuff.
absolutely. And listeners and watchers have probably heard me say several times that my model of self-awareness is reflection, recognition, regulation, and it's about recognition of your impact on others
Yeah.
and what you do with that, because then you make a choice as to how you want to regulate your behavior, or you say, actually, I'm stepping into my integrity and that is my impact on you, and I'm making
Yes.
a choice to continue along that path.
Excellent. That's absolutely concur with that. Very clear. Yeah.
In your journey of becoming a creative entrepreneur, people often encounter various, I guess, internal challenges like imposter syndrome or procrastination or with self-doubt, etc. What role does the work that you do really play in helping people work through those obstacles?
Well, I think as psychotherapists, we're very well placed to address those issues that are there. And I know that they're often bandied around, in the area of work, and these terms like imposter syndrome. But I think as therapists, we're very able to niche down into what exactly is your unique imposter syndrome. Your imposter syndrome is going to be different from mine. And that's why I think we do have something to offer around particular understanding that particular issue that someone has, whatever it's called. As I said earlier, there was doubt, self-worth, fear, failure, etc. But what I can do is quite quickly get into, so have you ever felt that before? What was it like growing up? I had a new client recently, and she's finding it hard to progress with developing her business. And it turned out that there was violence at home. So when she put her head above water, she was knocked down. So it's a very noisy work environment, and she wants to say something at work about the noise, but she's scared to say about the noise. So I bring my curiosity. And have you ever had that before, that you're frightened to say what you wanted to say, and just, oh yeah, well, I had a terrible time at home and I couldn't say anything I wanted to say, and my mother slapped me. So it was very clear that that's where that originated from. So I think everybody's, whatever it's called, has some unique origin, and that's what really I love doing, is getting in to unplug what is, like, to unlock that early trauma, and
Mm,
to help the person then find ways to manage that. Like mine is, I've done a lot of work myself, but if I'm at a meeting and there's some very strong, opinionated man at the top of the table who knows everything, allegedly, I find it, I need to work with my smaller self to say, now listen, Monica, you're going to be fine. You do know what you're talking about, or
yeah.
maybe ask the younger part to wait outside the door, but it's about, we can be playful about this, but it's about developing relationships with these different aspects of ourselves, which may still be holding us back.
You've mentioned curiosity a couple of times, and where do you stand on that? I suppose it's a fine line between curiosity and judgment, and I suppose you mentioned it there just a little. You sometimes you've got to park it. But what is your advice to people? How do you manage that so that you remain in curiosity and you don't slide down the slippery slope to judgment?
Well, I think that curiosity innately is having an open mind and being open to who's in front of you and what they're saying. But you're saying that humans being humans, that perhaps we also then have a, I wouldn't do that, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, in my experience, that once you really listen in to what's going on and get underneath, most human beings are really doing their best, even though it's what you mightn't be what you would do.
Right.
We're all making the best decisions based on the information we have at the time. So I think that having a non-judgmental approach will actually allow the person to, I mean, recently I work with trainee therapists, and one of the trainee therapists, the students, was saying that he had a new mother who was slapping her children. And, so obviously you don't slap your children these days. And, but the group that I was in were all saying, well, can we find out what's going on? This woman has come for help. Can we find out, okay, we think she shouldn't be slapping her kids, but let's find out what's underneath it. She probably doesn't want to be slapping her kids anyway, if the truth be told. But I think if people have the space to be held and listened to, I mean, what I would do if I was a therapist with that client, I'd say, listen, should I be worried about your children? But so it'd be sort of collaborative, open-minded, let's together figure this out.
Right.
Just told me
I
yourself.
guess there's definitely something about you step into your professional persona and you park your judgment at the door.
Yes, I think so, because you're not going to be any help to that person if you say you shouldn't be slapping your children, right? And generally, when you get it underneath, someone has a story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
The murderers or abusers, if you listen down in,
Yeah.
there's some story to tell. It's not,
Yeah.
doesn't mean their behavior is right. And I suppose that's
Yes.
what I've loved. I've been a social worker before this, and it's just given people space to figure out themselves and be listened to.
Yeah.
Everyone basically underneath it, is good and wanting to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. My background is working in the early years and early intervention sector.
Right, yeah.
So when you're talking about childhood trauma and how that impacts the way that we think, the way that we behave as adults, we are impacted. And there's no way around that. And we have to work with people like yourselves and work with our social workers, whoever they may be, who is providing support to help us move forward from that. But it's not an easy journey.
I think people need a safe space to be themselves, warts and all.
Yeah.
And that's when the healing will happen, if we're not judging them, but giving them the space to admit whatever it is they need to admit.
Yeah. What commonalities or themes are you noticing about leadership strengths or the gaps of entrepreneurs? Because what I'm noticing, and the more people that I'm talking to in different sectors, there are commonalities either in behaviors or in attitudes. Are you seeing something common within the entrepreneurs that you're seeing either through their leadership or the gaps that they're identifying?
Well, I think in terms of leadership, I think people are being challenged, particularly more conservative leaders are being challenged about people asking for what they want. And I was working with a group of solicitors on conscious leadership, and they were talking about flexible working hours and hybrid working. And they were saying, we just give people what they want, because people are becoming increasingly empowered and say, well, I can't be going traveling all that distance. Sure, doesn't make any sense to that. I can work just as effectively at home. But people are more empowered, or, about their children being sick or their needs or sabbaticals. People, I do think that there is a shift in the hierarchy, that it used to be what the boss said went, that sort of thing. So that, I think that's one thing. If you had a conservative notion of leadership, I think you're being forced to change into more inclusivity, into sharing information, including people in decision making. So I think that if you're not doing that, you're going to be challenged. But in terms of the other bit about entrepreneurs, and I suppose also I think entrepreneurs are really leaders because they're being leaders of their own lives. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And what I feel is strongly around is that more and more people are wanting to take leadership of their lives and to make their own decisions, whether it's that they're going to rent out in the countryside and work from home and have a room for their craft work, or the digital nomads, whether they want to work in the sunshine somewhere. That I think that all those opportunities are opening up. But the challenges in that, I suppose, is to keep going, to believe in yourself, to trust. But a lot of people are at a point of change. I was at the Eckhart Tolle conference, and a lot of people are standing up saying, well, I'm a 62-year-old teacher, but really I want to be a singer, but I can't sing. Or I'm a vet, but really I think I'm very intuitive and I really want to open up to this other side of my practice and be more intuitive. But people are opening up to more of themselves. And that really excites me, because that's what I want to be part of, that, helping them to open up to more of themselves.
Oh, fascinating. How are you finding that leaders are responding to this? So you said that absolutely entrepreneurs are leaders in their own right. But if you're a leader of an organization and you've got so many direct reports, are you finding that leaders are open to these opportunities? Because not everybody is like that solicitor's firm that you mentioned that are saying, absolutely, we're saying yes to what people want.
Yeah.
Are you finding that there's a balance between those who are saying, absolutely not, you've got to do it our way and we're holding on to our authority? Or are you finding that more people are saying, do you know what, there is flexibility, we want to open up our opportunities to people?
I think that's the way forward, and all the people I meet, and particularly since COVID and lockdown and with everything turned upside down, and then obviously the external world is a lot of chaos as well, that I do think that people are realizing we do have to have different ways of doing things here, more inclusive ways of doing things, because we do want people to stay and we do want people to be engaged. And I mean, I used to teach about workplace wellness, and now it's obvious that, I don't even bother mentioning that if your staff are happier, you're going to be more profitable because people are engaged and working more effectively and communicating. So, I think that's almost taken as read now. We know that workplace wellness is something that has to be included. And I think that now it's about being more aware of the other changes that are happening and allowing your team to be more empowered and supporting them in that way.
Yeah. One of the tools for developing self-awareness that I talk about in my book is journaling. A couple of years ago, you wrote a blog about journaling and specifically the method you use to journal. I'm really interested to find out more about that. Well, how does journaling manifest itself for you?
Fantastic. I have been journaling, I think, probably for 30 years.
Oh, okay.
I don't know when Julia Cameron's The Artist Way came out, probably at least 30 years ago. But I have it as an intrinsic part of my day, no matter where I am, when I'm traveling or in a hotel. I consistently do it because I feel it's really a way of clearing what's in my conscious and unconscious mind, maybe writing about any dreams I might have had, but clearing my frustrations about what we all have our frustrations and feelings about whatever's happening in our lives and ourselves. And so I used it as a way of just scribble, 3 pages. I do what she says, 3 foolscap pages. And I find it's a really good way to clear, but it's also good if a client has a particular issue or they're upset about something, or we've done our session, but it's still not cleared. Or sometimes I might invite them to write a letter to the person, not send it, but that kind of the writing out and the expression. And if we allow the flow, then we get into the unconscious. Start off with the conscious, but if we just allow the flow, then who knows what's going to emerge on the paper, yeah?
What are your thoughts on the difference between typing that we all do on our computer versus picking up a pen and writing?
I think that when you pick up the pen, you're closer to your own truth. And I think you're listening closer into yourself because you don't have something in between. Now, I don't know whether anybody can prove what's right or wrong in that, but my sense would be, I remember doing a creative writing course and having that dilemma about, and I did handwrite them, and I know some writers and poets do just use a laptop, but it's probably a matter of taste, really. I love the morning pages and the pen and paper. And I'd really recommend it to all your listeners as a way of starting the day. I think I'm a great believer in putting margins on the day, rather than just getting up and straight out into it, to do some practice, whether it's your meditation or your morning pages or walk or something, just to set the tone for the day, and it means you're in charge of the day and it doesn't just happen to you.
Oh, that's interesting. Margins around your day. I really like the way you described that you are closer to your thoughts by having a pen in your hand.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea. So when you are thinking about your own self-awareness, how do you develop it? You've got journaling as one tool. Do you do anything else that expands your self-awareness?
Well, I think the bodily practices like yoga can be very,
Mm,
because you're actually feeling into your body and it does take you out of your mind.
true.
Uh, yeah, I used to swim a lot, but even walking, again, anything that takes you out of your busy mind. Meditation, obviously, if we can still ourselves and notice the thoughts come and go and just develop a relationship with what's happening in our body. And that's all going to increase our awareness. So then we're more likely throughout the day to be able to respond rather than react. We're going to be more in control of our responses and our emotions and how we behave, etc. So
I definitely agree. So for me, Wednesday night is now Tai Chi night. And I
fantastic.
certainly know
Yeah.
that if I think about anything other than the movements I need to
Yeah,
do at that particular time, I've lost the flow. So yes,
exactly.
you have to concentrate, don't you? And it takes you absolutely, as you describe, it takes you out of your head and into your hands and into your feet and wherever you need to
Yes.
be at that particular
You'll
point in
fall
time.
over if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So just before you leave us, are there any pearls of wisdom that you'd want to share with our listeners and watchers around developing their self-awareness, or maybe even about seeking support from others to help you develop that self-awareness?
I think that it's really crucial that we get to know ourselves and to know who we are in the world and what our strengths and talents are and what we're here to do. And I think that that's what we're all being invited to do, is to really step up and in and to move beyond our fears and limiting beliefs. And I think that this, as I said earlier, but the structure's collapsing. And I think like my parents' generation, it was an easier kind of way and world to navigate. It was much more simple and straightforward, and worked hard and just got through things. But now there's so many more opportunities and choices and more confusion, more fear. So it's really important that we dig deep into ourselves and to our own strengths and our own knowings and our own passions and our own strengths, and find out what we love to do, what's our heart's desire, what we are here to do. Yeah.
Monica, is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners just before we finish?
That I'm running online creative entrepreneur groups. There
Oh,
are online groups for people who are feeling a little bit stuck, or that they've more to do. They'd love some support around unraveling what that is, and love to join a group where there's other people who are wanting to step into a more fulfilled, heart-centered kind of life, one that makes more sense to them, has more meaning. So if anybody's interested, I say, get in touch. Let's have a introductory meetup and see if this group is for you. But I find them to be very powerful and supportive. I'm a great believer in the handmade life, the one made by hand, the one designed by us and for us. So I'd love to hear from any of your listeners if they're interested to hear about how to create more of the handmade life for themselves.
Amazing. Listeners, we will make sure that there are links to the show notes so that you can get in touch with Monica if you want to be a part of those entrepreneurial groups to support each other. Amazing. Monica, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Nia. It's a pleasure.
I'm thrilled, delighted, and so excited to announce the launch of my book, The Self-Awareness Superhighway, Charting Your Leadership Journey. The book has got 3 parts. Part 1, Why Are You Here, Traveller, which is all about defining and describing self-awareness, leader effectiveness, and leadership at all levels, and setting out why it's important to you, the reader, me, and us. Part 2, Where Are You Going, sets out the 9 directions of the self-awareness compass. The 9 chartable compass points cover things like care, humility, authenticity, and reflection. And chartable is a mnemonic, CHARTABLE. Part 2 also explores the signposts and directions that enable you and the roadblocks and trip hazards that obstruct you on your journey during your working life. Part 3, how will you get there? This describes the variety of tools, techniques and methods that I've come across during my exploration of self-aware leadership that you can use to develop your self-aware leadership skills. And it covers things like mindfulness, journaling, coaching, and 360-degree assessments. I've dedicated my book to those who want to care better for others and those who want to be better cared for by others. I think it's going to be of most interest to people who manage people and have a desire to improve their leadership and management practices. And I also think that it's going to be of interest to people who've been led by poor leaders and people who want to know how they can in turn be better and do better than the people that have managed them. Please remember to leave a rate and review on Amazon because rates and reviews influence rankings. And the higher my book goes in the rankings, the more chance we have of developing self-aware leaders and self-aware workplaces. Thank you for joining me on today's episode where we aim to develop self-aware leaders around the globe to generate kinder, more respectful and creative working relationships through reflection, recognition and regulation. Head over to my website at knowingselfknowingothers.co.uk to sign up to my newsletter to keep up to date with my blog, podcast and book. Looking forward to having you on my learning journey.